I just brought some photos here from some of our events that our committees put together. We just had one at the Lents Memory Garden. It's the Portland Memory Garden, but very few people know it's actually in Lents. It was very successful last weekend. The Lents Community Clothing Closet, Lents Fair, and a couple of cleanups that we have coming up. We always need more volunteers, so if you're interested, please let us know so we can get you signed up. So, let's see, we're going to go around and do introductions before we get started with announcements. But first, I wanted to do something that we haven't done before, at least I haven't done before here in this capacity, which is a territory acknowledgement. I think it's important for us as an organization to acknowledge that we are on the unceded, which is a nice word for stolen, traditional tribal lands of the Multnomah, Cascades, Clackamas, Oregon City, Tumwater, Tualatin, Kalapuya, and other Chinook bands make their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. I talked to Sean Cruz about this. He's the Jim Pepper Native Arts Festival Executive Director, because I really wanted to write a territory acknowledgement, and I needed some guidance on it, and I wanted to do it in a way which would actually serve the purpose, and ask ourselves why it's important beyond just simply acknowledging. And he was saying that some of the languages and cultures of the people that were here for thousands of years before us still exist. They're just not visible. So anything that we can do to increase that visibility is helpful. And my hope is that we can build on this acknowledgement, both to increase visibility for Native communities and accountability for white people, and to explore concrete actions that we can take to disrupt and dismantle colonialism, just beyond just saying this. So some questions to think about is, how does this acknowledgement relate to the event or work that we're doing? What is the history of this territory? What are the impacts of colonialism here? What is our relationship to this territory? How did we come to be here? And more importantly, most importantly, how do we connect to the Native and Indigenous communities so that we can build relationships with them and support the work of local Indigenous nations and organizations? And one concrete way to do so here in Lents is actually coming up in May at the NAM Family Center. On May 11, they have the NAM Spring Marketplace event that runs from 11 to 4, showcasing work from some of Portland's finest Native American artists. It's a great opportunity to connect face-to-face with people, and Sean Cruz will be there along with other musicians. So again, that's Saturday, May 11 from 11 to 4. So with that, I'm just going to pass around the mic and do introductions. This is important because it helps us get to know each other, so try to take some pride in it and own it. Maybe you want to tell us how you heard about the meeting or what brought you here tonight. If you're a board member, let us know. If you're a former board member, we'd love to acknowledge you. If you are on a committee of the LNA, that's also helpful to know.
Hi everyone, my name is Courtney Stratton. I live over on 84th, and so I've been a member of the Lents community for two and a half years now. Moved in about 2.5 years ago. This is my first meeting, so looking forward to coming and hearing from you guys and hearing from the community.
Mary Oxford, resident, 22 years.
Hello, my name is Andrew Wilkins. I publish a series of websites called Lents Portland. Helps keep neighbors involved and keep up with what's going on. And I help the media sometimes with Lents, so I'm one of 3 people from today.
What was the website again?
villageportland.com.
Autumn West, Lents Neighbor, and rebel browser.
Robert Bader, Lents resident, former board member.
Hey, Jason Berg, Lents resident, about 11 years, live just a few blocks away from here. I'm also a Lents history researcher.
My name is Ben Coogan. I'm a Lents resident. Bought a house in this neighborhood like 2 years ago. Got involved with the finance committee like a year ago.
Chris Mandeville, about 2 years in Lents. I'm involved in the Portland Memory Garden, which we had that event about a week ago. It was really good. And I'm also neighbor coordinator for Friends of Trees. And I come to this meeting started about maybe like 4 or 5 months ago, and I'm really interested in making Lents an even greater place to live and a neighborhood that works for everybody.
Yeah, my name is Jim Carl, and I attend neighborhood association meetings in various places around the city when there's something of interest on the agenda. And I have a website called Debunking Portland that kind of points out some of the delusions that Portland lives under. It's well worth your while to want to read. So thank you.
My name is Emma Bowerman, and I don't live at the just outside the border of Lents, but I work at Lynn Elementary School, just down from us, and I have an community outreach with everyone about some pieces of business.
Hi, my name is Dan Rivas. I am actually an interloper from the Roseway neighborhood, so just north on the second. But I'm here from the city called Portland to talk about the commission for
And my name is Julia DeGraw, and I live in a neighboring neighborhood in Montvilla. Moved there about 5.5 years ago. My grandparents used to live there too, so it's deep roots in that neighborhood. And I am here to talk about the prospect of changing our form of government and creating city council districts. So I work with the organization called Portland Forward.
David Simpson, a frequent visitor to Lents.
I'm Stephanie Scoville. I use she, her pronouns. I am a new homeowner in Lents as of 2 months ago. But I just moved here from Kenton, and I was on the Kenton Neighborhood Association, so I'm hoping to get involved here.
Hi, I'm Brian Moore. I am LNA board member and current treasurer.
I'm Marciani. I've been here also for about 2.5 years, and I'm the secretary.
I'm Joel Reddick, and I'm about 10 years Lents resident by the Lents Park, and I work just up the street at Northwest Bogier Bike Shop.
I'm Robert, the Lents Neighborhood Association Public Safety Chair. Been in the neighborhood since '92. I have 3 kids. It's my primary thing, being a father of 3. Oh yeah, and coordinator for Lents here that's happening obviously.
Sarah White, I'm board member. I've been here once about 9.5 years now. Vice chair. And I'm Sabina. I'm the chair of the Lents Neighborhood Association, and one of my roles is to facilitate these meetings. So, with that, before we move to community announcements, which is actually my favorite part of the agenda every time, I just wanted to recognize our note taker, which is Marcy. And Marcy also picked up all this food for us. Thank you. And our childcare provider, Carmen. It's usually Norma. They're in there in that boardroom. She keeps everyone very contained, so we have to thank them for that as well. So tonight we actually have just one main topic of discussion, which which we'll see how it goes. Usually our agenda is more crowded and then people complain that we don't have enough time for discussion. So tonight you'll have ample time to discuss everything. Let's see, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, code of conduct. You know, it's pretty self-explanatory. We just mostly don't want to interrupt each other, and if you want to talk, raise your hand, and I'll try to get to people in the order in which they raise their hands. We ask that you try to limit it to no more than 2 minutes if you're going to speak, and then if you've already raised your hand, and someone else, if you've already spoken tonight, and then someone else raises their hand, I might go to them instead of you a second time, if that makes sense. So with that, let's do community announcements. If you have any events that you want to tell people about, or any groups that you're starting, or committees, or anything that you want to share with the community, raise your hand.
Okay. Hi everyone. Like I said, I work at Kelly Elementary School, and I help facilitate the transition into kindergarten. And one way that I do that is help promote our kindergarten open house that we have. This is going to be our second one coming up next Monday. So that's one thing I wanted to pass around. Basically, it's a way to connect with teachers at the school early. And I realize that even if you do not have an incoming kindergartner this year, the more hands that have a flyer, and maybe pass it to a neighbor or ask the market you go to if they can put it up. Just more people spreading the word is very helpful. So if you would take a flyer, if you can think of anyone that you could pass it along to, that would be great. And another program that we have this summer is called Early Kindergarten Transition Program, and it's a 3-week program that helps support a smooth transition into kindergarten. It's free, and it's for any children that are going to be starting kindergarten next fall at Kelly Elementary School. So I have a flyer for that as well. And then, Kelly Elementary School is a sun school, so it means that we have after-school programming for children, and then we also offer different adult classes. So we have, I have a flyer with different classes that we have going on right now that are free to anyone in the community. And right now we have a computer class, a sewing class, an English class, and a bilingual Russian and English citizenship class. And especially the sewing class, I highly recommend it. It's super fun, and I'm going to go a couple times myself. Been once, and it's definitely worth checking out. So I'll pass those around as well. And then I also lead a group called Play to Learn, and it's a group for 0 to 5-year-olds and their parents or caregivers to come enjoy a facilitated play group. Most of the time it's like play-based learning, and then we have snack and circle time at the end. So it's just like a nice community building program that also gets little ones into the school and experiencing the school environment and practicing all those early learning skills. So anyone is welcome to come to that as well, and I have flyers for that. So yeah, those are my four events related to the elementary school. Thank you for listening. I'll pass this around.
Thank you for coming to tell us about that. So the next meeting at the end of May is the Transportation Forum. So if anybody's interested in joining the Transportation Committee to help put that together, and other events throughout the summer, hopefully, related to transportation, please find me after. And then another announcement is one of the programs that I work with at my day-to-day job, the Immigrant Refugee Community Organization, is a summer works program. We put about 1,000 youth into internships for a couple months throughout the summer. So if you have a small business in the area, or you know of anybody with the opportunity to get youth internships, it's fully paid for by different resources, so it's not a burden on you or the business. And we are the full-time employer of record and pay the fees of the wages opportunities for the students. So that being said, if you have any connections, please also let me know. If you have opportunities for youth to get internships, or if you have youth, you know about youth in the area who can benefit from the networking and the connections that they make in an internship, this is a great opportunity for 16 to 24-year-olds. Autumn first, and then Marcy.
I just wanted to say, I was really disappointed in how the LNA handled the new copper penny sign thing. I felt it really lacked integrity because I guess to deny ownership, and that because it suddenly became a problem, and basically to dump it on the neighbor, the tidy-tidy, and send him a letter. I don't know what it said, but basically it felt like it must have said, "Too bad, so sad, it's your problem now." And I really felt like that lacked integrity. And it's kind of a stain on the LNA, and it's kind of sad and not fair to our neighborhood. So I just needed to say that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Marcy.
So Portland Metro and Pink FM are putting on an event in the summer, June 1st, called Paint the Town Green, and I'm their point person for Lents, and so we've just kind of worked out all the details. So mostly I just want to say, if you don't already follow our Facebook page or check our website, please do that, because that's where I'll be posting a lot of information about it. But basically, we'll be meeting in Glenwood Park at 9 a.m. on June 1st. Bella's Bakery has donated some breakfast items, and Blue Seasons has donated some snacks and stuff, and then Portland Metro is providing lunch afterwards. And we're cleaning up 82nd, kind of between, I think Lents will be due and Flavel. So please look for those announcements.
Thank you. This is our second year doing this event, and it was very successful last year.
I just wanted to double down on what Autumn said about the new copper penny sign situation. There's ample paper evidence of it, the sign belonging to the LNA, and the LNA board making this decision that it doesn't own it is totally off the wall and misrepresents the people of Lents in general, and a lot of people to whom the sign meant something positive. Older residents, people who've been here a long time. The new copper penny represented as someone put it to me, it was the place to go in Lents, and the memory of it meant a lot to a lot of people. And Sydney, who's tidy-tidy, is pretty angry. I don't blame her, and it's a stain not just on the board of the LNA, but on every member of the LNA who had nothing to do with the decision, but it's in your name, it's in our name. Cindy, by the way, did manage to do what the board refused to take responsibility to do. She found some place for the new copper penny sign within a week, and in fact she had 3 or 4 people who were credible and were able to prepare the sign and display it, who were ready to take it. So it's going to, at this point, it's going to stay in Lents. It's going to be in the Eagle Eye eventually when it's fixed up and made possible to have it inside there. So I think that's, as Autumn put it, it's been a real stain on this organization.
Thank you for the update on the future of the new copper penny sign. Some people might not know the background to this, but it's essentially the sign that was the copper penny establishment. When we tore it down, it got placed in a number of places, and the LNA was handling it for a while, and we got stored in the parking lot of the diaper place, Tidy. So for a while now, we've just been talking about what we should do with it and who owns it, and that's a big topic of discussion. I don't really want to get into it right now, but it's not a topic on the agenda, so I don't really want to spend time on it. I want to respect everyone who came here for the discussion item, and But we can always talk more about that on the side, or we can address it in a more proper time and place. So with that, yes, any more things to say? Any announcements or community building things?
So I sit on the board. I was on the committee relative to the sign. The LNA basically decided we don't have an interest in the sign. That's it. We didn't get into anything further than that. And I want to celebrate that it's found a new home, because I think that's really excellent that without us doing something, it was able to land in a good place. So just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that.
Yes, Jason.
Hey again, Jason Bird. I'm a researcher of Lents history. I've been working on a project pulling together documentation and photos of Lents history. I have a partner that I've started to work with who's helping me, named Alexis. She's been extremely helpful. And we're interested in input from the community to find out what things that what people are most interested in learning about Lents history. And our ultimate goal is to pull together documentation and photos to make it available to people who are interested. So we're trying to come up with a plan of how to, the best ways to prepare it and to present it and make it most available. So if anybody has any input or maybe knows folks who have lived in the neighborhood for a long time and they have their own remembered history that they would like to share, those are people that we may interview, or just has any tidbits of interest, we're interested in all that. So get a hold of me if you have any information. I'll give you my email, or we can just connect. Thanks.
This is Chris Mann filling in. So just a quick recap of our event at the Memory Garden. It was 14. It was a really cold day, but we still had about 50 or 60 people show up. I would say about half the people were first-timers, so that was really good. And for those of you who don't know, the Memory Garden is designed for people with memory issues, suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, but the garden is for everybody, for kids, for elders, for everyone in between. So if you haven't been out there, it's at the corner of 104th and Bush. So Northeast Lents. We gave away about 100 plants, and it was a really good event. I just wanted to thank the Neighborhood Association and Sabina for supporting our event, and then Portland Nursery was a sponsor as well. So thanks.
I found the space helpful for children too. My 5-year-old daughter was there, and so since it has only one place that you can enter and exit, she couldn't get lost. So she was just kind of on her own for 3 hours and kept track of her. Any more announcements? No? Okay. So with that, we will move. Oh, yes. I have a handout here for upcoming LNA events, but other Lents events as well. And you're welcome to grab on one of these on the way out, or I can pass them around too. But like Diesel said, we have the transportation forum that will happen at our next general meeting. So 4th Tuesday in May, paint the town green. That's June 1st. That's the cleanup that Marcy mentioned. The pet parade is June 2nd. It's also sponsored by the LNA. The longest day gathering, that's another event. It's going to be on the longest day of the year, June 19th. Also at the Portland Memory Garden. Chris has handouts for that. We're doing a second Lents community clothing closet. We might have a dedicated space for it, but if we don't, it will be here again, and we'll need lots of volunteers. So talk to me about that if you'd like to help. Lents Fair is August 11th. Again, we need lots of volunteers for that. And then also, end of June, we're planning a bike/walk tour of Lents. We kind of want to do it under the umbrella of Pedalpalooza. So our traffic committee chair is putting it together, and Joel might help. So So plenty of opportunities to get involved if you would like. So with that, we're going to move to our discussion tonight. Portland's Commission Form of Government is a time to restructure. And we have Julia DeGraw from Portland Forward and Dan Rivas from Portland City Club here to talk about alternatives to the current form of government that we have. And it's a topic that was proposed by one of our LNA members. Autumn suggested it. And we think it's relevant to Lents and East Portland because oftentimes we feel not represented or underrepresented on this side of town. So let's explore some other options.
Thank you so much for the intro and for the opportunity to have this conversation. And thank you, Autumn, for suggesting this as a topic. So in order to have a discussion about how to change our form of government, what our options are, it really helps to have an understanding of what our current form of government is, where we're at, in order to have kind of an understanding of the critiques of it, and then we'll kind of go over some of the alternative recommendations the City Club of Portland has put together. The City Club took a couple of years to really do a deep dive into the current form of government and searching for what potential alternatives could be. So Dan and I are going to tag team kind of giving you the background so that we can then have a really, hopefully, informed and robust, conversation about what y'all would like to see, right? So I came to this issue before I went to work at Portland Forward. I was a candidate for Portland City Council. I ran in the 2018 primaries against incumbent Nick Fish on this topic. This was my lead campaign issue. I live in Montevilla. My grandparents lived in Montevilla, so growing up I spent a lot of time, all my summers with my grandparents. They were the primary caretakers when my parents were working. And it was just really clear as an adult living back in that neighborhood that we had been neglected for my entire lifetime in East County, in East Portland. The same roads that were unpaved when I was 6, 7, 8 years old are still unpaved. We don't have street lights in a lot of places. We don't have sidewalks in a lot of places. And I also learned that in order to get those, we end up, citizens having to pay for them, right? So it's like, I just really, and that's when I kind of started to do this deep dive into why. Why is it this way? And it became really apparent that having just 5 commissioners who are elected in at-large elections, which means you have to run a citywide election in order to get elected, does not lead to representation. It's abundantly clear in the services that we get in East Portland that we're not represented. And that was kind of my primary topic when I was running for Portland City Council. And Dan's going to do a much better job of giving kind of the background of how that form of government came to be in Portland. But if you look at the history of it, the majority of people who've been elected through that at-large election system are wealthy white men, generally from the west side of town. That's our history, and the form of government that we have is largely rooted, the at-large system particularly, where you don't have districts, has been found to be it's been found to be in violation of the Voting Rights Act in a number of other states. So because of the fact that it makes it very hard for marginalized people to run for office and to win and to be able to afford to win. So I was a huge proponent for districts from the beginning of that campaign, and it's a passion, that I'm it's an issue I'm very passionate about. And that's why one of the reasons I went to work at Portland Forward was it gave me the opportunity to continue to engage on this important issue. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I think it's a good time to hand it off to Dan. We're going to go back and forth a couple times to kind of give you the background, and then we'll open it up to discussion.
Thanks, Julia. Thank you, Sabina, and thank you, Julia, for giving me a place on the stage and sharing your time with me. I'm from City Club of Portland. As Julia mentioned, we Who feels like they pretty confidently have a good grasp on what this government is and how it works? And who feels like they know nothing about the commission form of government at all? Yeah, it's a good mix, and I think that's pretty common throughout Portland. So let me give you a kind of basic rundown of what the system is as it's currently conceived here in Portland. So we have a mayor, of course, like almost every city, and that mayor is one of 5 city commissioners. And so all 5 of those commissioners also make up the city council. Every one of those 5 commissioners has an equal vote on city council. So if you get 3 votes, regardless of if it's the mayor or anyone else, you might be able to pass what you need to pass. The kind of key thing about Portland's commission form of government that is remarkable is that every one of those city council members I mentioned is a commissioner. They are assigned multiple bureaus that they run. So think about the water bureau, the fire bureau. Those people answer up to a commissioner, one single commissioner, who is sort of like their CEO. It's the person who ultimately makes the call for how those bureaus run. And we can talk a little later, and Julia will get a chance to talk a little bit about some of the problems with the system. You can already imagine, right, one commissioner has the fire bureau, one commissioner has the police bureau, and fire and police aren't doing the law. And maybe that's because the commissioners aren't doing the law. Maybe it's budgetary reasons. There's a lot of reasons now that these different parts of city government get paid. Portland does not have a city manager. We do have, Tom Reichert is, what's his official title? He is the chief operating officer or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. He's a new position too, right?
Yeah, so, the city is sort of piecemeal trying to patch up some of the issues that have emerged over the years, but we don't have a city manager. The commission, interestingly, has both legislative and executive functions. So, say they're running a bureau and they have a policy that they want to put forward, they not only are kind of crafting that policy and then they're going to vote on it, and then they're going to implement it as well. So it can kind of get a little convoluted in how that policy actually is vetted and how you actually think about the checks and balances in that system. And then, as Julie mentioned, the commissioners are elected at large. So all of Portland, no matter what neighborhood you live in, you're all voting for the same commissioners. And those commissioners may live in your neighborhood, and they may not. If I'm right, I don't think there's ever been a city commissioner from Lents. I think that's pretty safe to say in general for most of
Right, Leonard in East Portland, but I don't think
it wasn't Lents.
he was the outlier. Well, I did, it was him.
Right, and Joanne, I think those used to be second now. So it's not impossible, but the reality is, so there's never been someone from St. John's, for example. Never someone from Parkville. So you can pick all these neighborhoods, but you can then look at Irvington, Alameda, pick any Southwest Portland neighborhood, and you can have a very long list of city council members. So there's an issue there, possibly. I'll back up and talk about where this came from. Portland has, in May, it'll be 106 years.
I'm going to go get them.
That we've had this commission form of government. It was passed by voters in 1813 by a vote. I think it was less than 1%. It was like 200 something votes that decided that. This system came from Galveston, Texas. It was implemented after a massive hurricane basically wiped out the city of Galveston. 12,000 people were killed in the region, and the place basically was feeling like they needed to rebuild from scratch. So they decided to rebuild their government from scratch and decided that the elected representatives weren't going to do the job, so they just wanted the governor to appoint people to be their city council. They devised a system where each of those council members is a commissioner, and they each would run some piece of the city. And the idea was if one person could be running each thing, and they could more directly get it up and running. Unfortunately for them, that was declared unconstitutional. They couldn't have representatives who were unelected, and so their compromise was to have at-large elections and keep this commission on. And at the time, most of the country was running a kind of ward system, often like a straw mayor-ish type system. And so those were often seen as very corrupt. There were like ward bosses, you probably heard that term, people who were sort of running that part of town and had a kind of stranglehold on all the activities in that town, in that neighborhood. And so this was meant to be a reform and to do away with those kinds of tight controls on neighborhoods and have a kind of more open system where everyone was being represented equally, was the theory. This, because it was a reform idea during the progressive movement, it spread pretty quickly. Texas really embraced it after Galveston. A lot of the cities in Texas, like Austin, Houston, Fort Worth, adopted the system. It went out to Des Moines, Iowa, Shreveport, Louisiana, Jackson, Mississippi, Mobile, Alabama. Even cities like San Diego, Denver, a lot of western cities also implemented this new government. But interestingly, most of them abandoned it really quickly. San Diego abandoned it in 1915, Wichita, Denver, 1917, Nashville, Sacramento, 1921. So you saw a quick spike after Galveston, a lot of interest, a lot of excitement, and then almost immediately you saw a pretty steep decline. A lot of cities looked at that and said, this actually doesn't work. And so today we are currently the only large city that has a commission form of government. So I sort of alluded to some of the issues, but I'll kick this back to Julia to talk about maybe some of the problems she's seen with the way our government's currently constructed.
Yes. I think something that's really relevant to keep in mind is that in the other commission forms of government, like in Galveston, people would run as experts in the bureau they wanted to run, right? They'd be like, I'm an expert in water. I'm going to run on the water bureau platform. In Portland, we actually removed that component of the commission form of government and made it so that the mayor assigns bureaus to commissioners. I'm not going to say at random, but definitely not necessarily based on that commissioner's interest or skill level, right? And a lot of folks, I mean, just because you can win an election doesn't mean you know how to run a bureau, right? This is why you kind of refer to the city manager idea. The city manager is a professional who understands how things work, right? And can be held accountable to metrics. Whereas in a commission form of government, what we seem to be experiencing, I think you can't point to a crisis or problem we have in Portland right now without connecting it to one of these structural issues within our city form, our commission form of government. What you end up with is what was alluded to earlier, which is siloing, right? You have all these different commissioners that are really passionate about their commission, about their bureaus, and they get really turfy, about resources, and the bureaus often don't share information with each other. They have different systems that don't communicate with each other, often like technology systems. So anyway, there's a lot of like these, and you also end up with what a lot of people refer to as 5 mayors, right? Each commissioner is like totally in charge of their little fiefdom, right? What you don't have under that system is anybody who's responsible to you, right? Who do you call if you have a problem? Who's your commissioner? You have to be able to navigate the system, you have to identify which bureau is your problem underneath, who has that bureau, and call that commissioner, and hope that maybe they might help you, and not just like pass you around this system, which is what often happens when constituents call their commissioners. So this was one of the reasons that creating districted elections and also getting rid of the commission form of government became such a compelling idea for me, is that you would be able to have a representative who represents you, who's responsive to your needs, right? And under that system, and Dan Oh, yes. So something that I found to be really interesting, having worked more closely with staffers in the city who work for Chloe Daly's office and Joanne Hardesty's office, they asked staff that are going to be a lot more transparent and communicate with the public in a more clear way than I've ever seen before from a city council member. And they made it really clear that, I mean, our commissioners spend about 80%, the commissioners and their staff spend about 80% of their time running bureaus. So who's creating policy? Who's looking at the 20-year vision of our city and investing in a 20-year vision that we stick to for 20 years and implement it, right? Under the commission form of government, every single bureau can't tell if they're coming or going because they get passed around from, you know, one commissioner to another commissioner, and they change the parameters of the game, right? You know, because they're thinking about their personal legacy, or their, you know, bad news doesn't travel up also in the system, right? Because it reflects poorly on the commissioner, right? Rather than a commissioner being like, wow, this isn't working, we have to not only like be transparent about that, but we have to figure out how to do this better, right? But they're just worried that what normally happens will happen, which is the bureau will just be taken away from them, they'll get a black eye, and they reassign someone else, and we're not dealing with root problems. So really, we need long-term thinkers who are in office with the purpose of serving their communities, who feel responsibility to their constituents, right? And we don't have any of that under the commission form of government. And I'm not saying that the people who are in our office are bad. They're not. I think they have really good intentions. This system isn't designed to serve. That's just not how it works. And I think something that you might be getting to, but I just want to put this in here real quick, which is 5 people have represented the city since our population was about 200,000. I mean, we're getting close to a new census, and I mean, I know that the county is close to 800,000. I forget how big the city is from, 6? We're over 600,000, and it's going to be much larger, I think, when the next census comes out. And we still only have 5 people representing our city. That is, like, statistically insane. I mean, not insane, but like, we're an outlier, you know. So we need to grow the council so we can have more representation, and have councilors who actually, like, you know, can be more responsive to a population this size. But yeah, I think that really, the one other thing I want to get at, this sounds a little, I think the CEQA report probably covers this better than I can articulate it right now, but the 5 commissioners is a very strong consolidation of power. We only have 5 people who are like running the little fiefdoms, and it lends itself to a process for policy making and for creating projects that's extremely non-transparent, that doesn't engage enough community voices or stakeholder voices. And this is how we end up often with a lot of like large projects that are botched, right? They just don't look like the city knew what they were doing, or there's unintended consequences. And it's because the process by which a commission form of government comes up with big projects for massive policies is innately not broad enough. It doesn't take into account enough perspectives. And if you have a more legislative body where people are elected from districts, you're much more likely to have a process that's inclusive, that might be longer, but is going to come up with much better solutions and results for people. And again, people being able to legislate from a long-term vision, which I think the people who work in the city, the people who work in these bureaus would love to have visionary leaders who can like stick to like a 20-year plan that's going to solve these big problems, like 82nd Avenue, right? We had like a long-term vision of 82nd Avenue with benchmarks and funding. We would have like we would have been able to solve it by now, right? So it just it just keeps on changing over time. So anyway, I think those were the big points I wanted to make, and I will pass it back to you and hand it to the City of Research and Recommendations.
Yes, that is exactly. As I mentioned, City Club did this report and put out some recommendations. I'm going to go through those quickly. A couple things to say about this. One is City Club has researched this many times before. We've had this government for 106 years. People didn't like it almost from the beginning, and so we've been sort of fighting about this as a city for more than 100 years. City Club has been around for 102 years, so we've been fighting about this since the beginning of our organization, and we will continue until we change it. So that's sort of where we're coming from with this. We also recognize that previous conversations have been about efficiency and effectiveness of government, which are, of course, incredibly important. But what's been missing in that conversation was an equity lens. Is this form of government equitably serving the entire city of Portland? And so that was the research charge we gave to our volunteer researchers. That was the question. Does the current commission form of government equitably represent all residents of the city? And how should we choose our representatives if not? So we put forward some recommendations with an equity lens in mind, and we sort of borrowed the city's equity lens with some kind of modifications of the committee. But we made these basically 4 recommendations. And I'm sure this is where we'll really want to talk a lot more, so I'll kind of go through these quickly and then hopefully we can open up to discussion. So recommendation number 1, hire a city manager. We feel like we need someone who is accountable both to the mayor and city council and who can work across all the city bureaus. The second piece, and as Julie mentioned, that city manager being a real expert versus our commissioners who are trying their best to gain this expertise that people build over 20, 30-year careers. They're trying to learn it in a few months. So we recommend, let's just put that person in place who already has that expertise. Second recommendation, increase the size of city council. Julia mentioned 5 city council members. That was maybe okay when we had 200,000 residents. We're at maybe 660, getting close to 700,000. That puts us way out of line with every other city anywhere. We have about half the number, actually I should flip it, 120-something thousand people per representative on city council in Portland versus about half that in Seattle, 67,000. And as you go to Oakland, it's even fewer constituents per representative. Other Oregon cities like Bend and Ashland, they all have bigger councils than Portland does, despite being much smaller cities. So we think we need to increase city council to at least 8 council members to represent city council. We also think we need to move to district representation. This is what most directly is probably relevant to you all here at Lents. We feel that every part of the city deserves someone who knows their neighborhood and who can directly represent them. We haven't gotten that historically. We have gotten a little better recently, but the reality is you're not likely to get that kind of direct representation in the current system. And finally, we think we need to consider alternative voting methods. First past the post, you have a May primary and a November election. That May primary, a lot of people turn out. If you're someone like Nick Fish, you have the financial support and the name recognition to just glide through your May primary. You get 50%, you don't have to run in November, and you're done. If we have a different voting method, for example, what if we had a ranked choice voting method? Then you have the opportunity for just one election, so sort of consolidating those elections. And then you have the opportunity for someone who is maybe a second choice for a lot of people because they know that person's competent or they really like their ideas, but they're more comfortable going with the name brand politician. In a ranked choice system, that number 2 person might actually end up getting elevated to the number 1 slot. So what that means is the incumbent doesn't have that sort of inevitability advantage that they enjoy right now in the first past the post system. So we are actually researching this further because there are a lot of different alternative voting methods. One is familiar probably to some of you, is the STAR system that they almost got past Lane County, I believe. So close. Maybe next time they will. But there are other methods out there, and we're looking into those to make a recommendation that really digs into those a little deeper. So maybe we can open up to discussion. Julie, you have one more thing?
One more thing. Just because I think it'll help inform the districting conversation. Kristen Eberhardt normally gives this story, and she's brilliant. She's a researcher for the Sightline Institute. She was also on the committee that did the report. She has a whole report on this specific to Portland, and I think you can find it by, if you like Google Portland City Council districts, or you go to Sightline Institute, you can probably do search for it there. But basically, she came up with recommendations in the city like Portland, where you don't have, well, I'll put it this way, and a lot of the communities that determined the at-large election systems were not were not compliant with the Voting Rights Act. Those cities would often create districts where they could like guarantee you would have like a black person elected or a person of color because you had a majority, what they call a majority-minority district, which is kind of like a weird way of going about ensuring you have representation, because it's kind of like what if these populations move and whatnot. But the bottom line is, in Portland, we're such an overwhelmingly predominantly white city, and there's no one geographic area where you have majority minority population. And her recommendation about the best way to get more equitable representation is to have multiple member districts, where you have possibly slightly larger districts and elect 2 or 3 people per district, which kind of gets at the ranked choice voting or star voting method. Is extremely useful if you're taking your top 2 or 3 candidates, right? That's another way of kind of helping ensure that you get more women, working class people, people of color into office, is by possibly doing multiple member districts. So that's something I kind of wanted to throw out there because it might be helpful for your Q&A. Oh, and the one other, I promise I'll stop after this. Because I imagine one of the questions is going to be like, how do we do this? There's 2 ways this can go. The first is 3 ways it can go actually. A citizen-led ballot measure where we determine what kind of election system and form of government we want, and we take it to the ballot, we collect signatures, and we vote on it. Doing that in a big, broad, coalition-driven way. Or there's a charter review process. The city has a charter, it's kind of like their version of a constitution. And that charter review is coming up in 2020, is when it starts, I believe. 2021? So whoever we elect in the 2020 elections to city council is going to be overseeing that process. Keep that in mind as you're voting. And through a charter review process, they could choose to restructure the government. And that will be a process that's led by the city of Portland. So I'll leave that to you to decipher if that sounds like a preferable option. And the third would be that they could then refer, like the city could refer something to the voters. So those are really, I think either way, even if they amend the charter, voters have to ratify. So no matter what, we're going to have a say. There's been a few attempts to pass a change in how in the form of government. They've always been strong mayor systems at the ballot, and they've always failed. So like the strong mayor system, if the city were to refer a strong mayor system to voters, I have a strong inclination that would fail like every other one. So that's the gist of how it would go. We do get to vote on it. It's just how it gets to the ballot that is up to question.
Okay, well, before we open it up to questions, I wanted to make an observation related to what you said, Julia, about like who's our commissioner, who do we go to if we have a question. And theoretically, our neighborhood association does have a commissioner. We wouldn't go to them for the reasons that you mentioned, but So our neighborhood association is one of 94 recognized by the city of Portland. And we have our East Portland District Coalition, and that's one of 7 that make up the bureau called the Office of Community and Civic Life. And that bureau is under Commissioner Daly. And so Daly oversees the Bureau of Transportation and the Civic Life, all 94 neighborhood associations. Guess which neighborhood association takes up the most resources? They actually do get a lot of calls from neighborhood associations, in fact. So it is hard to imagine if they oversee these bureaus and they also act as liaisons for all kinds of groups, how do they actually have time to work on policies? So in that sense, it makes sense, like you mentioned, that we would have more representation so that they could actually work on policies and not just manage the bureaus. So, yes.
Well, thank you. This has been kind of a nagging topic in the back of my mind for a number of years. About districts, I think that's a great idea, primarily because it will lower the cost of getting elected. And the second thing is, right now, all of our city commissioners have to satisfy the entire city, so there's sort of an average. And that ignores an awful lot of detail. You mentioned changing the method of voting. I got a proposal for the biggest single change we could do is never allow anyone to be elected at a primary. If one person wins the primary by 90% of the votes, he still goes to the general. I think that would be a dramatic change in the city. Another dramatic change would be to elect key bureau heads, police, water, roads, and probably a couple others. So they're going to be responsive to the people, not to the politicians. And that means they're going to have to work on lowering our water bills instead of some goody-tooty philosophy. The police, well, maybe they're going to have to listen to complaints about the number of people that are getting shot. Or maybe the trash in the neighborhood. Now, there's a problem with the city manager. I've seen it in a couple governments. And that is, when you have a division on the city council, keeping in mind that the city council hires and fires the city manager. The city managers tend to play to the majority on the council and ignore the minority. I saw one commission, there's a transportation board, actually hide information from the dissenting board members. And that kind of stuff, I'm sure, goes on at the city level too. And so the city manager is not a panacea for this stuff. And and the biggest deal, you mentioned the failures of these proposals. That's because, at least in part, they were a grandiose plan to totally restructure and solve all our problems. How about you do it one step at a time? Step number 1, keep everything the same except we will elect by district. Then in 2 years come back and say, add some precincts. And 2 years come back and do another change. And so it won't be an all or nothing. So thank you.
Let me answer a couple of pieces. The city manager and the do this incrementally. The city manager problem is a problem of there is no perfect solution. But what we have right now is we have bureau directors who only have to appeal to one commissioner. So there's actually a majority of the commission that gets,
Well, that's why we elect them. That's why we elect the key bureau heads.
Right, so there's a whole other possible recommendation for how to deal with that. The other piece I wanted to mention was about incremental change. One of the problems we've created for ourselves is the commission form of government requires an at-large voting system. If we try to vote by district, then you have this problem of which district gets which commission or which commissioner. So which bureau, I mean to say.
No, because the mayor assigns the bureaus. So there's a disconnect between the
the commission.
Regardless of who assigns them, it's still the case that someone, say, who is elected, pretend Lents is its own district. Someone elected in Lents is now running the Parks Bureau for the whole city.
Only if the mayor chooses that person to be the.
Right, but the mayor chooses, pick your bureau, it doesn't matter which bureau. The point being, this small geography controls a citywide bureau. That is a recipe for all sorts of inequities in a city because, of course, where you represent the voters you need to please is where those services are likely to go. And that's pretty much human nature.
Yeah, and that was going to be my exact answer to the, you can't, if you're getting rid of at-large elections, the commission form becomes really innately problematic, more so than it already is. Because if you're citywide, at least it slightly makes sense that you would run something like a bureau that's citywide, but not if you represent a district. But the other one, I've been thinking about this a lot too, about accountability and about the city manager system. I think that exploring the idea of having more than one city manager may not be a terrible idea. Having three over three major areas of the city might make sense. But I also think another area that is worth looking into is under the commission form of government, the auditor kind of gets like shrunk into as small a space as they can be shrunk into, right? Their accountability is not like smiled upon by the commissions, by the commissioners. When you have a manager system, transparency and accountability is like the only way it's going to work well. And I think shoring up and really making sure we have a powerful auditor who's able to really have metrics and daylight what is, what isn't working, and that the managers are supported in being not just held accountable, but also given the opportunity to do better when the data shows that something isn't working, right? Just because something isn't working doesn't mean, oh, we gotta get rid of that manager. It means that manager now has an opportunity to fix it, right? And if the audits, in the future show that they are failing to fix it, then we do something about the manager, right? So I think that I really want to take a look at that auditor model where we have a stronger auditor to really make sure that the manager system is kept in check. Because I've heard that feedback from a lot of folks, and I'm like, that's what auditors are for. They just need to be used, in the appropriate way, given the resources they need to do their job.
The auditor is elected. So
and that as well, yeah.
Hi, thanks for coming and talking about this subject. One of the reasons I thought this was important for Lents in particular and the Southeast is I think that we have issues that are different from the rest of the city, and we have a higher concentration of minorities, a bigger ethnic mix. We have more single-family homes as opposed to apartment buildings, more single landlords of single-family homes as opposed to landlords of big apartment buildings. We have a lot of land that is, we have freeway that a lot of other parts of town don't have. We have a lot of the ODOT land and stuff like that. So I think that like when we did the town hall and we had the commissioners come, most of them had never even been, like I don't even know if they'd been this side of the river, let alone back to Lents, and they had no clue what was going on out here. And so I think that if we had a representative, I really think that to have our unique voices heard is so important, because we're part of Portland too, just as important, and we're not going to get as equal play if they're just thinking about what's happening in the city. So that's why I really felt this was such an important subject for Lents and for the Southeast. Thank you.
I want to clarify in your mind, you were talking about how there have been other votes, citywide votes about changing the system, and I think I heard you say that they were all had a strong mayor at the top, similar to what we have now. Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't say it's similar to what we have now. We actually, because of the commission form of government, that's the other irony, is it's like you have a bunch of mini mayors, but you don't have any one real executive. The only power Mayor Wheeler has is to set the budget and assign bureaus. He's just a glorified commissioner, right? And rather than, and so every other form of government has been like this really strong executive mayor idea, right? Where the mayor, I mean, one of the recent ones had it so that the mayor was able to like veto decisions that were passed by the, I mean, it's like, but the idea was that like the critique of the system from those, some of the previous ballot measures seemed to be that they felt that there was a lack of executive power. And I think that that's I don't agree with that analysis. And I don't think that the City Club report that took 2 years to produce that looked at it through a representative and equity lens did not come to that conclusion either, right? It's the mayor under the system that we're proposing, and the system isn't totally carved in stone, but under a system where there's a mayor and district elections, the mayor would still be at large, right? The mayor needs to be elected by the entire city and represent the whole city. It would be more powerful than a city councilor. But I think because you have the manager, that's bouncing out the power of the mayor. So the mayor is not like because a lot of cities have, I think Seattle has a model where the mayor is essentially the city manager and the mayor, right? And it's like I have the same problem with that. Just because you can win an election doesn't necessarily mean you know how to run a city. But I think Dan might have.
Well, the last time, soon after I moved to Portland, I didn't really understand, not that I understand now how government here works, but at that time, this was in the 90s sometime, late 90s, there was something on the ballot about it, and I couldn't find it in myself how to vote for it because I didn't understand it. So that's why I was asking the question, because in my mind, recollecting, it was about completely changing the system from what it is. And I figured that was districting, but I guess not.
It might have been districting. It usually also included a strong mayor system, which is like, it doesn't matter if the rest of it looks good. If you have a strong mayor, Portland voters are just like not cool with that. But yeah, what I found really promising from my campaign, I knocked on, most of the canvassing I did was just on busy streets. I was like knocking on every door. I didn't do targeted knocking. I knocked on every door on busy streets. And within a 2-minute or less conversation, literally every single person I spoke to agreed that this form of government doesn't make sense and that we should have representation. I mean, literally not a single human being I spoke to disagreed with that premise. So I think part of what happened with those previous campaigns is they were a little top down. They didn't explain what was wrong with the existing system. They didn't come up with a solution that was representative and equitable. But if you approach people from the lens of, does this make sense? And would you like to have representation in districts? It's just like this light goes on almost immediately. So I think that it's, on top of all that, we're an exploding city with a massive housing crisis and massive wealth inequality, and you can't, the system is being exposed as dysfunctional to a degree that we're at a breaking point, and we weren't there in the 90s, and we're there now. And I think that that's also a major difference. When this is on the ballot in 2020, I'm just going to call it, when we put this on the ballot for 2020, is what we really need to be aiming for. If we do this right, it will pass, and it's going to be what's so desperately needed for our communities. So.
Yeah, I tried really hard to bring tonight someone who was in support of the current form of government, and it was really hard to find anyone. There are a couple of commissions that have been vocal about supporting it, Fritz and Fish. But other than that, from my research, I found some PSU professor and other people, and I reached out to them, and they said, I want to note I have since changed my opinion since that article was published, and I now think that because so many people in Portland supported change, I think that probably that's what's best for people. And then I talked to Linta Johannes, who's a policy advisor to Clothing Daily, and she said that they're now focused on developing more resources for us that would answer questions like this in a more just like a purely informational way rather than take a stand. So she didn't feel comfortable coming here to talk about what they support, but she said that they recognize that a lot of people reach out to them trying to find out information like the type that you provide, and they think that they want to work with groups like you on how to develop resources like that rather than take a stand.
I will say that Chloe Daly has publicly said she supports a change, and Joanne Hardesty as well has said she was not elected because of the system, but in spite of it. And so I think when you look at the people who are diversifying city council, they're recognizing that uphill climb for them and recognizing that if they were to leave their seat, it's not a sure thing that you're going to get the same or increased diversity. In fact, it's very likely 10 years ago, our city council was all white men. It's not unreasonable to think in 5 or 10 years it will go back to that.
Anyone else? I feel like there was a hand over there. Are you sure? Okay.
Hi again, my name is Danielle. So recently I was at a community forum hosted by Portland Metro about an upcoming bond measure to support infrastructure for natural spaces, and a big conversation was around working with other bureaus and other agencies so that transportation, natural resource management, and like housing could happen together. And so I'm just curious about like if this district election version of government in the city, like how do you imagine that working with the metro government council situation?
Oh my God, I love that question. So I have a little bit of a personal story. Lynn Peterson, who's the president of Metro, met me right after I announced I was running for city council, and I was at the Labor Day picnic with my, stickers and my first piece of literature, and I pitched her on the city council districts, and it turns out that's something she's very passionate about. She was involved in the city club report process, right? Which I did not know. I didn't know what she looked like either, so I had no idea who I was talking to. And we got coffee, and it was amazing, but what I said earlier about the fact that our current commission form of government fails at long-term planning and visioning, right? Metro is that entity, right? Metro is the one that's supposed to have the long vision, create the plans, and implement them, right? And like the city, as it is right now, is I'm trying to find like a diplomatic way of saying it, but it's not easy to work with if you're trying to do long-term planning, because it is unstable. The joint housing office between the county and the city, that is an outcome of the city failing to do a good job. I mean, no one is going to say that to you quite so plainly, except for me, but I'm going to say that, right? It's absolutely the truth. The county is better at long-term visioning and about, setting up a plan and sticking to it and having benchmarks and having funding, right? And none of these forms of government are perfect. I'm not going to say that. That's a really important thing. Like, nothing's going to be perfect, but its dysfunction is apparent. When you have legislators who are serving their people, who are thinking 20 years out, you're going to get better outcomes at every level of government that we have. I mean, I really believe that, and obviously I have a stance, but I think that's, we're currently really not getting that from the city. It's a challenge, and this change is what's necessary, I think, to make them a better partner to the other local municipalities, and you can probably give them more.
I agree.
I speak really bluntly sometimes.
So, I think everybody here knows the city of Portland's broken currently. I mean, I think a lot of us know the history. I've lived out in East Portland since I used to live in David Douglas when the Portland annexed it illegally, basically. But you have a huge problem. We have numbers out here, but we don't vote. So all these great ideas are wonderful, but if you can't get people to come out and vote, how is any change going to happen?
I also love that question, because if you don't see you on the ballot, you don't show up, right? I have all of these, so East County Rising is this incredible organization based in East County. I think they're based in Gresham right now. They have over, a dozen young women and men and mostly people of color, running for school boards, right? And they are going door to door, and they are turning out voters who've never thought of themselves as voters, and they're energizing this like electorate that like is just ready to go, but needs to feel like there's something to show up for, that they can actually be represented, that the system can work for them, right? This system can't work for them. It's demonstrated how much it can't work for them. So I think that actually changing the method of how we vote and creating districts is going to be, and we actually have data on this. I don't know if the city report includes this data, but I've read reports on this that it definitely increases participation when you have districted forms of elections, and especially it just increases democratic participation. So yeah, I actually feel like it's still a heavy lift. We have to activate them, we have to do the door-to-door work, but I'll put it this way. If I could have run a districted election on my $40,000 budget, which was $20,000 in kind and $20,000 cash, I got 33% of the vote in a citywide election, almost 40,000 votes. Ocasio-Cortez got through her primary with 15,000 votes, because it was a district. Right? I got more than twice as many votes, and I couldn't get through a primary, right? Because I was running a citywide election. If I put the same amount of resources into a districted election, it would be a totally different ballgame. And I could have probably even won against an incumbent with new, bold ideas, right? So I think that's the other thing is it's much less expensive for people to run for office when you have districts, and when people see people like themselves running for office, it's going to be, and they literally get a door knock. Because it wasn't worthwhile for me to knock on a bajillion doors.
But how are you going to get it passed? Because I don't know if there's ballot initiatives. How are we going to get it passed?
Oh, well, because I think the quality of the ballot initiative matters, for sure. Like, the quality absolutely matters. Like, the lead message on this is like when I was canvassing on it door to door. The lead message on this is deeply resonant with voters, and I think, especially in 2020, which is the reason why I'm aiming at 2020, there's going to be innately a massive turnout, and that will benefit us. And just like the Portland Clean Energy Fund, which won with a substantial, like 67%, they did really well. That kind of grassroots power, they knocked on unlikely voter doors, and those people showed up, right? So it's like we are at the beginning of changing how people vote in the city, and we need to tap into this coalition and that network and make sure that there's a broad grassroots support for this. But I feel really confident it's not a strong mayor system, and we have a broad-based coalition that we absolutely, because like you said, everyone knows it's broken, which they didn't know before. It worked for enough people in the 90s too. Like, there was a bunch of complacent, doing okay folks, but like no one's feeling okay anymore.
Yeah, I'll address that pretty directly. City Club has looked at this history and understands very clearly the way this was attempted in the past. It was a couple of usually white men who felt like we know better about how to run the city, so we're going to make this new ballot measure and put it in front of voters, and of course they're going to vote for it. And that kind of arrogance didn't work, obviously. We know that City Club can't do that. We know that method, that way of working is not who we are. And so we are actually we're doing a few things. One is we're doing a lot of community meetings like this, where we're just going to go out, share our research findings, start a conversation, start to collect some of the thoughts that bubble up at these meetings, and feed those, kind of gather those up and look at those all together. We're also putting together convenings where we're putting together groups that seem like-minded in some way and that represent different parts of our community. So we are going to have, Portland Forward will definitely be one of the members of a convening that is a lot of just civic organizations that are trying to do things in Portland, and we're going to talk about what we think and find out what they think and start to see where we agree and where we can work together. We're also going to put together a table of just communities of color, and those groups will also have the same opportunity to share what they think, tell us how interested they are, whether they're not interested, share their ideas about how to make this better, and see if we can build some momentum in those communities as well. And so building on these few different convenings and these community meetings, we then will have hopefully a coalition that will all be aligned on a set of ideas that will then inform a ballot measure, and then we'll all work together as a coalition to get this thing passed. This is a long game. It's going to take a lot of work, and City Club will definitely not be the central player in this. We are hoping to sort of get people together and then step aside and let the campaign run as it needs to run. But we're really pleased to use our platform to help bring everyone to the table, especially communities of color and East Portland and outer boroughs that have been neglected in previous conversations.
Thank you. Okay, so we have time for one more question. And I'm going to hand the mic over to Jason, since he's had his hand up for a while. And then I have a couple of questions for people here.
This is really quick, it's not a question, it's more just a clarification for the record. So there was a city commissioner from Lents in the 40s, and he served 3 terms. His name was Fred Peterson, and he also served as mayor from 53 to 56.
Thank you to our historian. So I'm wondering if anyone here is opposed to this, if anyone opposes this change and is in support of the current form of government. And it's okay to be in support. I'm just wondering if there's anyone here that wanted to make a comment in favor of what we have now. No? Okay. So with that, I wanted to ask you guys, do you see any merit or benefit in an organization like the Lents Neighborhood Association possibly taking a position on something like this and coming out, taking a stand kind of like you all have? Would that be of any benefit?
That's a huge stage of a political campaign is getting endorsements, right? So it might be, what you can do now is come up with a public stance. Since there's no official campaign yet, it's a bit early for officially endorsing a campaign. But the degree to which there's organizations like Portland Forward and others that are openly saying that, Deborah Kafori at the state of the county got a question about this, and she said out loud into the mic on live everything. It was a City Club event. She said that she agrees that the city needs to get rid of the commission form of government and have districts. She just said it. So it's that stuff is really powerful. So neighborhood associations coming out in favor of this is huge. So yeah, that would be amazing.
Okay, so one last thing that we have on the agenda is approving the minutes from last time's meeting. I don't know if you guys grabbed a copy when you came in. I can hand them over by the door. And this is kind of an important part of our meetings, is making sure that our minutes from the previous meetings reflect what actually happened. So if you were here last time and you'd like to vote on this, okay, who doesn't have a copy of the minutes and wants? And what we're looking at basically is just to make sure that it accurately reflects what happened, if there's anything that you want added to it. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so I move to approve the minutes from the March 26th Lents Neighborhood Association General Meeting as they are. Okay, Marcy seconds. Any comments? Okay, if you're in favor of approving the minutes, please raise your hand. Okay, and keep them up so I can count. favor? Is anyone opposed to the minutes? Okay. And how many are abstaining? Also need to count that. So. 10 abstaining.
Well, I wasn't here.
I think it passes. Right? Yeah. No one was opposed. Okay. So that's all that we have. The meetings were recorded, and you can, we'll share the recordings online, and we'll also share them in our newsletter and on our Facebook page. And I can also give your contact information if you'd like, if people have questions. Yeah.
So actually, passing around public boards, I actually also interested in keeping up to date on all these things that are on, not just this one, so they're interested in passing around.
Cool. And I'm going to pass around all the LNA events that we have coming up. Thanks, everyone. Adjourned.
Very much.